A lot of this is stuff you already know. Some of the stuff you have already heard, even in his presentation. That's the difficult part of emergency management. It's not rocket science. It's common sense stuff, and we want to reiterate it as much as possible to let you know that you need to take responsibility. You need to tell your family to take responsibility for themselves, for your businesses, for your friends. Look out for your neighbors. It's all of us in this together. The city of Tampa, Hillsborough County, we work together with a tremendous effort to ensure that we, as a community, are prepared, and you'll see that. You'll see that you heard it in his presentation. You'll hear it in my presentation. You'll hear it in Chief Ford's presentation. That's what we do. That's the only way that we're going to be successful. All right? So when you talk about hurricane season, yes, we are in hurricane season. All right? You've heard the different types of storms that are out there: tropical depression, tropical storms, and then hurricanes. There's also another one out there today, and I think Brian will talk about it, and that's a low. It's a low pressure system that's not either of these, but it still can cause us some impact. So I hope everybody's paying attention to the weather. Brian is going to get you all up to speed on that and let you know exactly what the current situation is. But just remember, no matter what the situation is, all of this information we're giving you can help you to be prepared for it, okay? These are the hazards. You talked about storm surge extensively. We all do. We all will, because that is the killer, okay? Of course, inland high winds, tornadoes are possible. Even today, even this little storm today, tornadoes are possible, and heavy rain and inland flooding. We're in Tampa. We live in paradise, okay? And the price of living in paradise is that you have to prepare. All right? You cannot take it lightly. Flooding along the coast is going to be there if there is any significant amount of rain in very short periods of time. All right, storm surge, we mentioned before, is the biggest killer. 9 out of 10 people with storm surge die from storm surge. If we tell you to go, you need to go, and you need to have a plan of where you're going to go. The forecast. We look at the forecast every year. Some people ask me, and I know you look at the National Weather Service, they were saying, well, Tampa is #1 in terms of vulnerability this year and overdue for being hit for a hurricane, and how do you feel about that? And I tell them, well, every year we look at these predictions. We look at these forecasts every year, and that's just what they are. They are forecasts. They are predictions. They are not particulars. They're not etched in stone anywhere. I think actually it's a couple of monkeys sitting in a room and they threw balls at a sticky wall, and wherever they land, those are the numbers sometimes. But they give us predictions every year. All right, you know, this is 2011. You had the named storms 16, 9, and 5 for major hurricanes, and NOAA gave 18, 10, and 6 in the same categories. Well, you look at the end of the season, and we had 19 storms, okay? So they really can't get it necessarily exact, but sometimes they get close. 7 hurricanes, 4 major hurricanes. 2012, okay, last year, same thing. We had we had an active season predicted, 10 storms, 10 named storms, 4 hurricanes, 2 majors, up to 15, 8, and 3 from NOAA. Well, we were here all last year. Everybody here was here last year, right? 2012? And had all that fun, RNC, all of that stuff, right? All right. So 19 named storms, okay? 10 hurricanes, 2 majors that actually happened last year. When you talk about the impacts we had here in Tampa, really we had a couple of threats, but Tropical Storm Debbie, which was a small storm and not even a direct impact, right, had a significant impact on us. The rainfall, the 4 feet of storm surge, those types of things. We opened a shelter or 2. We did all kinds of stuff like it was a large storm, but it was a very minor event overall, okay? But look at Hurricane Sandy and what it did. I mean, a lot of loss of life, $77 billion in damage, went up there and just devastated the East Coast, New York, New Jersey, those areas. You have to be careful. You cannot take a prediction and just understand exactly what your threats are. You have to be prepared no matter what, okay? And this year, we're looking at, you know, an active season or an extremely active season, you know, 12 to 7 and 3 with Dr. Gray and NOAA, 18, 10, and 6. But as was said, it only takes one. All right? You got to remember that it only takes one. These are the names. I have a young lady in my office named Erin. If that storm is coming towards us, you all are in trouble, because trust me, she's, if it's anything like her, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. She's amazing. But these are the names for the year 2013. I like to show those. It's 22 storms, got 22 chances here, but you know, we've seen seasons where there's more storms than there are even names. All right? But we hope that we don't get through all of these, but just remember 1992, Hurricane Andrew came through. It was first storm of the season, and it devastated South Florida. So it doesn't matter how far we get down the list, okay? Or we don't have to hit any of these names, but if it gets that one for us, that could be a bad season. All right? You heard it before, rule number 1, run from the water, hide from the wind. Of course, that's what we evacuate for. That's what we call evacuations for, the water, not the wind. And again, you don't have to go hundreds of miles. You can go tens of miles, all right? Go to the nearest shelter, have a plan of where you're going to go. Share that plan with someone. I don't care if it's your friends, your neighbors, all the family members. Let family members outside of the area, okay, know what your plans are. Because they're going to be worried. They're going to be calling down here looking for you if you haven't told them. They're going to be worried sick about you. They need to know where you're going to go, all right? Of course, manufactured mobile homes, they have to evacuate all the time, and this is why they just can't withstand the winds. You've seen a lot of devastation from tornadoes. You know, you can't tell the difference. This is just as devastating, you know, from a hurricane to manufactured home or mobile home parks, all right? So they have to evacuate. Rule number 2, if the wind's blowing, it's not if it's blowing, if the wind is blowing, we know it's probably going to be blowing, but it's really about what is it blowing, all right? There's a lot of debris that's going to be moving, roof shingles, aluminum, other things that's flying through the air. You don't want to be out there in it. You don't want to be moving around. If we tell you to get to a safe place, if you've evacuated, you need to listen to us because it's very dangerous and you don't want to be caught in a situation like this, all right? And of course, when we talk about these storms, they are so unpredictable. We don't know where they're going to go. You look at Debbie last year, kind of meandered and sat out there, kind of was going, you know, over to New Orleans at one point, but it still slammed us and it kind of reached back. It was so oblong and not shaped in a conventional hurricane shape necessarily, but it just dumped water and it just sat there, all right? You have to be prepared and to know that you cannot follow the little line on these storms. There's a track, there's a cone of uncertainty, there's a cone that is provided. If we're in that cone here in Tampa, then we're going to be taking protective measures. We suggest that you do the same. Really start being aware of the situation, watching that track. But do not worry about the little black line. Really, it's not even going to be there for the most part. But do not worry about them saying this storm is going to be right here at any particular time. They really can't say where that storm's going to be. It's just too unpredictable. All right? Hurricane Charlie was a great example. You know, on Wednesday, August 11, that was the prediction, and it was, you know, coming a little south of Tampa. You know, on Thursday, it was kind of directly over us, all right, or a beeline straight for us. You know, on Friday, pretty much the same, and this was at 5 o'clock in the morning, all right? But then you look at where it actually came in at 2 p.m., it was still south of us. So that was a very fast change. The Hurricane Center does not have good skill in predicting how fast these storms are going to speed up. Okay, rapid intensification, they just cannot do that very well. They can tell you pretty much generally where they're going to go. The tracks have gotten much better. But you have to be prepared to take action no matter what that prediction is, as long as we are in that cone of uncertainty, okay? And when it comes to that, you need to have a plan. You've heard it before. You need to be thinking about it now. You need to know your evacuation zone. Ross said you can go to the City of Tampa. You can also go to hillsborocounty.org/emergency. Go to our website. You can put in, go into heat, and you can put in your address as well, get your evacuation zone. Outside, we're not calling them hurricane guides anymore. They're disaster guides now because really what we're talking about here is overall preparedness. We're not talking about just preparedness for hurricanes. If you do these things we're telling you now, you'll be prepared for whatever happens, okay? And that's the key. It's not just hurricanes, all right? But you need to have a plan. You need to write it down. You need to write it down and you need to share it with someone to let them know what that is. Not just keep it in your head and say, oh, I'm ready. If something happens, I know what I'm going to do and I know what my family's going to do. Does your family know? Okay, does your friends know? Does your family know? Does anyone else know? Your neighbors? Have you checked on your neighbors? Do you see if they have a plan? Again, we're all in this together. None of us can do this alone. And of course, you need to have supplies on hand so that you can survive. You mentioned pets, you mentioned friends, your family members. Don't forget those specialty items for elderly and for your children as well. You want to make them as comfortable as possible during these serious times. He showed you the map here that is in the Hurricane Guides and online. And also, by the way, you can go on our website, hillsborocounty.org, and you can download these hurricane guides or these disaster guides as well, okay? So you can get it in a PDF. The process, when you talk about evacuations, he mentioned the folks that make up the EPG, okay, the Emergency Policy Group. He's absolutely right. But what we do is we call these folks together and we ask them for a lot of stuff. We ask them for the ability to call for an evacuation. We ask them for the ability to take additional protective measures. We ask them for the ability to do whatever it takes to ensure that we can respond to whatever that threat is. And they give us that ability by signing that local state of emergency, and they give us a certain time period for that to take place. But before we're able to get that from them, we have to give them a lot of information. All right, we have to tell them exactly what we think the threat is. All right, how big and how bad we think it might be. And again, we're giving them information that we're not sure of, and we're giving it to them far enough in advance so that we can take those protective measures in a timely fashion. What that means is we need to make sure that we can ask for this local state of emergency so that if we start an evacuation, we can have it completed by the time those 39-mile-per-hour winds are affecting Hillsborough County. Okay, we can't be doing that after the fact. We can't have people on the streets moving around when those winds are here in our county. So we have to push that back. I'll tell you about that again in a little bit. But we're talking about the size and the track of the storm that's projected. We're looking at all the different factors that could go into us making a decision when to pull that trigger and call that evacuation. Are there any special events going on? Are there additional people in our county right now that we need to pay special attention to? Are the roadways, impacted, in a way that is going to seriously hamper an evacuation? Already, we have limited roadways, okay? We have over, almost, 400,000 people in a worst case scenario that we're going to be moving out of Hillsborough County, all right? If you look in Pinellas County, it's got almost 600,000. That's 1 million people that we're talking about getting on the roadways. We say evacuate, you need to be moving, and you need to be moving as soon as you can. So you can't start that process, once we say we're thinking about evacuation. You need to be thinking about it today, all right? But we're going to be, again, looking at other decisions like we have to close the schools. That's a big decision. All right? That's, if you're a parent in here, you know how that affects you and your household. We don't take that lightly when we sit down with the school board and we say, okay, this is what's going on, and we start talking about, closing schools. First thing I want to do is make sure that we've looked at everything that's really going on and is it absolutely necessary. All right? As Russ said, we don't take these decisions lightly. It's all big stuff. When you talk about the reasons that we call for an evacuation and try to use information that we're not sure about sometimes, okay, as early as possible. When you look at a storm coming towards us, all right, we're looking at those 39-mile-per-hour winds. The eye of that storm may be, 24 hours out away from us that, we say, okay, we have a little time. You may see that and say, that storm is not really here yet. I got another day. It's not here until 24 hours from now, even more. Well, those winds extend out a certain distance from that storm. We're looking at how far out those winds extend. All right? If those winds are going to be here in 12 hours, we have to have that evacuation done in 12 hours. So we will have to have started at least 24 hours before that. Okay? We have to start early just to make sure that we're finished. And we're trying to do evacuations only in daylight hours. Okay? We're not trying to move people at night. Evacuations are dangerous. People get hurt. And people sometimes die when you do move people, especially if they're very fragile and have health situations. Sometimes it's a bad situation for some, so we don't take that decision lightly or make it lightly. But anyway, we have to make that decision as soon as we can. Have a plan. Think about what you're going to do. Share it. Know where your family's going to go, a safe place. The contact, the communications package in there has to be shared with everyone. How you'll get back together. And use this plan not just during hurricanes, but in any situation that you can think of. We can't stress that enough. Have the food, the water, supplies, medication, all these things, the fun stuff for the kids to keep them calm, to keep them occupied. If your kids are as busy as mine, you have to give them something. And if we don't have power and those games go out, what are you going to do? You better start getting some board games now and doing things that they can do that's manual. Make sure they're comfortable. It's really stressful for children, pets. Anyone is stressful for all of us. So, but for our most vulnerable, we need to take another minute to think about what we can do to make them their life a little easier and make them feel a little safer. The first 72 are on you. We're not going to be able to come to everyone, especially if situations are not safe outside. Vehicles are not going to be moving around. Chief Ford, I'm sure, will talk about the vehicles not being on the road at certain times. If you call 911, we're not going to be able to come if the winds are blowing. All right. But I will tell you from Hillsborough County's perspective that if, in fact, because these storms are so unpredictable, winds in certain parts of the county may be dying down, the storm is moving through, as soon as it's safe to move again, I know these first responder units, they will be on the street and they will be trying to come to assist those that are in need. Okay? But what we tell everybody, don't expect it in the first 72 hours because if you're devastated, we're not coming. That's just a fact of life. We're not coming. We're not going to be able to. We're not going to put the first responders in any more danger than we're already in. I encourage you to stay informed. I encourage you to be aware. Look at this situation, this system coming in today. Be aware of what the possibilities are. All right? We have social media sites, the National Hurricane Center. They have Facebook, Twitter. You can use those sites. Ours, Hillsborough County Emergency Management, we have a Facebook, HCFR-Office of Emergency Management. Use these tools to get additional information and to stay alert as to what's going on so that you can make the proper decisions and make the safe decisions for you, your family, and even your businesses. Again, additional resources out there. There's no reason that anyone shouldn't have a plan, shouldn't have information to it. There's too many resources out here for us to figure out how to do it. We live here in a very vulnerable population, very vulnerable community. We need to make sure that we're taking the proper steps to be prepared.
Today we wanted to talk to you or tell you about our company footprint in a few minutes. I'll talk to you about different parts of our company and how many different areas that we have that we service, and how we're diligently working on to meet the expectations of our community with the rapid restoration, and how assure you that TECO is a company that goes over and above the industry standard to make sure that our infrastructure and companies that depend on us can be sure that after a power outage of any type, we'll be able to get the power back on. This slide is of our TECO People's Gas. That's the gas section of our company, and they have 300,000 customers statewide. They have 15 operating areas, and they're divided into two sections, and one is on the east side of the coast and one is on the west side of the coast. They have about 60,000 local customers. And we have 3 power generating plants. One of them is Big Bend Station, and that's in Apollo Beach. And then we have the Polk Power Station, which is in Polk County. And then we have the Bayside Station, which is right off of a little ways from Highway 60 and 50th Street. This is our service areas. We have 7 service areas, and that covers about 2,000 square miles. We have 670,000 customers, and we have about 3,000 employees that have been serving our community for this service area for 115 years. Our company growth is about 2% per year. But each one of our service areas has what's called an incident base in each one of them, so that if we need assistance with restoring service after an event, that we can call on the Southeast Electric Exchange, which we're a part of. Every electric company in that exchange gets together and decides who can send how many crews to help whoever it is that needs it. So the storm is monitored, and those calls happen frequently to make adjustments to that. But each one of those service areas have what's called an incident base, because when those mutual assistance companies come to help us, they don't really have operating headquarters. They don't operate out of our operations centers. And so we feed them, and they get work assignments and equipment from our incident bases, and then we take them to hotels at night for sleeping. Protecting our company business is important to us. Our company facilities and materials and services are what we call are the components of our company business. Our company is resilient. We have the power to bounce back, because what we do is we review our risk. What are our risks? We do reassessments every year to see if we're still in a good standing, if our plans are still working. We have clear-cut plans, and they forever get updated and reviewed so that we can have a better chance of mitigating any damage that comes after a restoration. We also partner with all the local agencies, the City of Tampa, Hillsborough County, and all the county's agencies and EOCs that are in our service areas. We are a culture of resiliency. We're aggressively involved in any type of a resiliency planning, and in 2003, these are some of the things that we've done. We've been involved in the post-disaster redevelopment planning, local post-disaster redevelopment planning. We have a new team that's working in our company on GIS and mapping of our products and our lines and distribution. We participated in a threat for cyber security, hypothetical, but it was more than just our company. It was our community that was involved in that. And we also participated in the Hillsborough County Vulnerability Task Force. So storm preparedness is something that we stress in our company. Every employee in our company has an emergency assignment, so it's our responsibility as an employee to, as part of our employment, a condition of our employment, to make sure that we have solid family plans, and that each one of us has to make the ultimate effort to get back to work as soon as possible, because we know that our community expects us to be able to put that power back on really soon. It depends on the success of your business and the success of our community. These are just a few things that we talk about with our employees, and they can also be shared throughout the community, such as having a preparedness plan before the storm season starts, and allow time to cover all the aspects of such plans. We have emergency evacuation address information that we collect from our employees, and in line with what other folks were saying was to tell somebody, well, we also want to know who that person is that you're going to tell. If you don't live in a flood zone and don't plan to evacuate, at some point you may need to. And so even though you don't have a plan to evacuate necessarily, we want you to be able to tell somebody where it is you're going and who we can call if we don't hear from you, because we're committed to keeping up with our employees and making sure that we can account for each one of them afterwards. So if we're in an evacuation zone, we need to evacuate as soon as possible, but let our contact person know who that is. We also have charts on our emergency management website, our internal website, that show all the nearest evacuation shelters and those that will have special needs shelters or will allow pets to be there. Practicing our family plans is another thing that we encourage people to do. Not just make them, not just put them down, but make sure you practice them with your family. What will you do if a disaster happens and you're not together? How will you contact each other? And that emergency evacuation contact person is probably going to work right into that scenario too. We also need our employees to identify routes. We have several different service areas and people assigned to all of those service areas as support. So we need to make sure that our employees know the route that they're planning to take, and then wait to find out if they're safe to travel afterwards. But so as long as they have 2 or 3 different ways to get to their emergency assignment, we're good with that. This is a checklist, and you can find checklists by the droves. In fact, we've seen 2 such checklists together, and I'm not sure that I have anything on my checklist that has not already been talked about. We've talked about photo IDs. I don't know if anybody mentioned spare cash, but if you don't have cash, ATMs work off electricity, so you won't be able to get any from there. So it's a good thing to have cash in advance. And let's see, first aid kits and prescription medicines. If you can get a 3-month prescription medication refill, it's a good thing to do that early, before storm season. That way you're covered for part of it anyway. Emergency toilets, or a means to flush your toilet. So you'll have to have water to do such a thing. That's something we haven't talked about. And of course, getting your home ready with sandbags or plywood shuttering or whatever you need to do. As a safety tip, we want to make sure that our employees and anyone else stays away from down power lines. Just because you're not touching a power line doesn't mean that if it's energized, it can't shock you. It tries to ground you, and so you'd be the victim in that. And so stay away from any down power lines, because you just don't know whether they're energized or not. Don't connect a portable generator to your home circuits. Generators shouldn't be used inside of your residence because of carbon monoxide. It shouldn't even be used in your garage because of the same thing. Air can get in from your garage into your house. A telephone that is not powered by electricity. In other words, one of those old-fashioned corded telephones is a good phone to have, just in case there is no power, no telephone service, and your cell phone runs out of power. In the event of a power outage, if you find a down wire or some other type of a situation that you think needs to be reported, there is a Tampa Electric toll-free dedicated line for power outage and power emergencies, and that's the telephone number there. So this is how we've prepared for a devastation or an emergency, and Matt's going to talk to you about how to restore.
All right, thanks, Sue. This is a picture. Good morning, my name is Matt LaRussa. I'm in the Distribution Restoration Department here at Tampa Electric Company. This is actually a picture of our Winter Haven area back in 2004 with Charlie that was talked about here earlier. Just some stats here on the Tampa Electric system. We've got about 11,000 miles of distribution. This is the distribution that distributes power to your home or to your business. We got transmission there too, the 1,300. Like Sue said, we've got about 680,000 customers. They're fed from 754 circuits, so you got roughly about 900 customers on each of the circuits. And we'll see some circuits here in a second here. We'll go through an example. We've got about 25 crews, four-man crews, about 100 personnel that respond. We've got about 36 troublemen that work by themselves or independent. They're our first responders. So little stats there on Tampa Electric Company. Our plan, as Sue talked about, we just drilled here in May. We have a mock storm every year where we review assignments, contacts, our procedures. We typically have about 200 action items from that drill that we'll have to go back and get in place here by the beginning of June or here by the end of June. When we go into this restoration mode, we put our crews on 16-hour days, so they're 16 hours on, 8 off, and we do that until the restoration is complete. So for Charlie back in 2004, we worked them 5 days, followed then by Francis for 10 days and Jean for 14 days. So we don't want to overwork them, but you know, it's not a race, it's a marathon. We want to keep them going here and keep them safe. We do prioritize our customers and their circuits, and we'll talk about that here in a second. We do try to work the outages that have most of the customers out. So, you know, if we got 1,000 customers out, we're going to try to work on that versus a single customer. So if it's a single customer with just a service to their home, typically those are some of the last ones that we do restore. As Sue talked about, we are a member here of the SEE, the Southeast Electric Exchange, and what this is for mutual assistance. If we get into trouble, we've had people respond. Entergy have sent crews to us, and Duke had sent crews to us back in 2004, and vice versa. Last year we sent crews up to New Jersey for Hurricane Sandy. We've sent them to Katrina, to Rita, to Andrew and Hugo. So we've sent crews to help restoration, and they've sent crews. And it's not free. We charge each other, so that's part of the restoration there. But it is an association that we're involved with. Wanted to talk briefly about these priorities. Priority 1 is our highest priority. And these are facilities that can't withstand any interruption to their operations. This would include hospitals, the airport, and MacDill Air Force Base would all be priority 1 customers. Priority 2, moving on, these are facilities that can need to resume operations after 24 hours. These would include your police and sheriff and fire department stations, the major county and city water and wastewater facilities. Moving on to priority 3, these would be facilities that have to get back online after 24 hours. You have the local fire and police stations. You have the grocery distribution, the cold storage facilities. You have assisted living facilities. You have nursing homes, would all be priority 3. Priority 4 would be the commercial customers. These are your gas stations, your local grocery stores, your banks, and other commercial customers that Tampa Electric has. Priority 5 is basically all the remaining customers. These are the most of the residential ones that then are captured here in a Priority 5. And what I like to do is just walk through a simple example here of restoration. You can see the storm's gone through, and similar to the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County, our folks, when the winds are greater than 39 miles per hour, we cease activity. We do hunker down, and we have people spend the night here at our facilities. And then afterwards, when it's safe to travel, we'll go out, and that's this example here. And you can see we've got some trees that have taken some lines down. All that's shown here in blue is de-energized. There's no power here. We got a substation here that distributes the power here through these lines, and all this for this example is unenergized. So the first thing we're going to do here after the storm is we're going to isolate the damage. We're going to go over here and we're going to open this out here and clear it off. We're going to open these fuses here and clear this up because of the tree damage over here, and we're going to isolate all that. So what you can see is this is kind of untouched now. We don't have any damage on that feeder. And there's a variety of customers on our circuits. You've got some Priority 5s all the way to the high Priority 1s. So after we've got that damage isolated, we then go back and we energize that substation. So everything in red now is energized. So we get that backbone, that feeder energized, and you still have customers that are unable to be energized at that point. So then what we do is we drop back and we say, okay, let's take a look here at our Priority 1 customers. Well, we've got a Priority 1 here. We already energized one Priority 1 customer when we've got the circuit back on. Now we've got this one here to work on. So we, cut away that tree, got the lines up here, and now we're getting ready to energize that one. And you'll see here we connected them back up and got them energized. And then we drop back here and look at Priority 2s, 3s, and 4s. So we continue that there until everybody's restored. And that's a simple example here. I'm going to show you a picture now. This is actually from our GIS system that Sue talked about. This is our Geographical Information System. And what this shows is a snapshot of our downtown area. And you can see that all these black lines, this is all that network that we have. We've got the lines here that cross the river here. You've got here the forum there, and all the circuits here. So that's a snapshot. We do have several substations here in the downtown area. We've got Washington Street, which is right here, which you have 6 circuits feeding from. Harbor Island is down in this area, and we've got circuits that come across here and feed the forum and the channel site area. We also have Marion Street up here to the north, and Estuary is here. And these are all the substations that feed the downtown area. And like I said, it's a maze here. A lot of the stuff downtown is underground. When you go out here, you won't see any overhead lines. It is underground. In any typical day, if you go out here now, there's water in our equipment. When we have to work on it, we do have to pump the vaults out here to dry them out so the guys can work on it. We do have transmission that comes in overhead to the downtown, so some of the lines that you do see are overhead, and that's the transmission bringing the power into the area. This next slide here shows the water level. Here's a view here of you can see the transmission line and the distribution, and that's an old picture here of the crosstown. And I think that there is the water level that we talked about, the 20 feet, which is, I think, associated with a Category 3 storm. So the surge here that we would see is 20 feet. You could see that it's right up there to that distribution level and almost there to the transmission. So we are in a surge area here in the downtown, and you could see the impact here if we were to be impacted here by a storm with the water level. So take heed to the advice that was provided here to evacuate early here due to the surge. Other thing I wanted to mention, a comment there about advice about staying informed. One of the things that we do have out here is our outage map. It's at tampaelectric.com. It shows the location of our outages, and it also, if you hover over the spots here, it gives you some more information about how many customers are out. The cause, if we know it at the time, we can put it in the system and you can see what caused it. The status, we're on our way to investigate. We're on site working. We needed to call out more resources here to help out. And also, too, we do try to provide an estimated time for restoration there. So some good information there on our website there that shows the location of our outages and the estimated time, how many customers we have out.
Thank you, Roy. Again, good morning and greetings. It's programs like this that really offer encouragement to our organization and especially to this community. It's one of the reasons that the city of Tampa, and more so the state of Florida, is respected as one of the most readiness posture states in the United States, is because we're always in that constant process of staying ready for some type of particular situation or otherwise. It really makes my job much easier as the fire chief and the City of Tampa emergency manager. And nobody does it better than this downtown partnership. And I'm very appreciative to both Sue and Matt because we work very closely with them in this community in making certain that you have the power and the resources that you're going to need to continually enjoy this community that's been very respectful in that respect. This is how Tampa prepares. We're concerned for our family, our businesses, our community at large, and all of those things that really makes the city of Tampa and this community that most fit and very robust community by making certain that everyone knows, first of all, I heard it said earlier, the vulnerabilities, what impacts our community. Not only are we concerned with weather conditions and things of that nature, but this community, this city of Tampa, also because of our geolocation, because of the industries that we have and ports in that community, we bring in a lot of hazards and a lot of situations that you have to be concerned about every day. It's not just bad weather, as I said. Major hazardous materials in the port, over 50% of all the petroleum that comes into this state that goes through the United States comes in right here. And on any given day, we can have a major eruption of a fuel tank, of a anhydrous ammonia leak or something like that, that we need to notify this community that you need to be prepared to get yourselves out of harm's way. Tampa Emergency Operations Plan is one of the things that we continually look at. We have what we call a CEOP. That's our Comprehensive Emergency Operation Plan. That plan is updated annually, every year, with respect to the conditions that we realize here in the community day in and day out. Obviously, it outlines the city's response and recovery efforts. All departments and employees are involved as well. And again, that's what I say about this partnership. Every year, you all look at the concerns that we have in this community, things that we need to address to ensure, again, the health and fitness of this community and that everybody knows what they are facing and what they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Who's involved? City of Tampa trains everybody. We're involved with every entity, every organization, so much so that my troops will be out next week over at TCO, over at your main plant, or at one of the plants at Sly and 22nd Street, working with your linemen and those persons, basically updating them on concerns, significant information about issues that we're going to have to face in this year's hurricane season. Everybody knows comes June 1 through November 30th, we deal with those issues, and we're right on the cusp of going into that season again. It's not just for our community, it's not just for the citizens. Every elected official, just like you heard from Hillsborough County's emergency director, Preston Cook, we also update our mayor, Mayor Buckhorn, the city council, all of our commissions and commissioners to what their duties and responsibilities will be in the event that we're impacted by something so that they know exactly what they will have to do to get our city back running. Tampa maintains over 8,000 square feet facility, of which is our EOC, and that's in the GTE Federal Credit Union over here, 7011 East Henderson. So we, on a regular basis, are over there working on disaster preparedness, managing EOC issues, all the way from Super Bowl events, all the way to hurricane events, and any other significant things from Gasparilla parades and things of that nature. City of Tampa proper deals with over 800 specialty events every year. And while you would consider that the Gasparilla is not a big incident, The Gasparilla Parade is a very, very significant incident for us because we have anywhere from 250 to about 400,000 people out in an open atmosphere. And in the event that we got inclement weather or a bad storm rolled up right now, there's nowhere for those people to go. So every road, every thoroughfare, putting those people in shelter to get them out of there, that is nothing short of a major, major strategic plan, and we have to have a focused process in order to do that. Everybody's out there having a good time. Well, things could go south really, really quick. And when you got that many people in a parade situation with no shelters, and you all understand how lightning works out here as well. We may not be the lightning capital of the world, but we're next to that. And being able to protect and safeguard our community is a major, major responsibility of mine, the mayor, and all the other community personnel involved. And we listen heavily. You're going to be hearing from Brian Lemire. Brian is locked and loaded with us, and we take a lot of information from him to enhance our fitness posture. Post-storm, you know, everybody's always planning, but obviously, and I heard the gentleman over here talking about after the storm, we're always ready. We're always planning for bad situations that happen because at some point they will happen. Your plan, your safe measure, your quality of life is going to be enhanced by the type of plan that you've got in place. Little planning, you're going to have probably, if you're impacted by something, your life conditions are going to be drastically impacted as well. The better your plan, the more appropriate your plan, the better you can expect your survivorship and that quality of life during this situation. And it's already been spoken about running water, telephone service, things of that nature. If you don't have a plan, www.floridadisaster.org/family will definitely help you put a good plan together. Know where you live, we've talked about those things. www.tampagov.net will also help you identify your evacuation zone. It's very important that you know these. When the evacuation notice is given out, please adhere to that. I will assure you, we are not hair trigger type of people. We don't pull the plug unless, of course, conditions warrant that we ask you to consider moving out and evacuating. Please have your plan in place. Please adhere to the plan, and it's not a good essential process to start putting a plan together when you're in that 72 to 48 hour deal. Pack enough cash, medicine, important documents, all of those things. Keep proof of ownership of your rent, and that's where you're also going to know when your properties are damaged so that you can go ahead and get the proper respect. Gang, it's so very important. When we ask you to evacuate, please evacuate. These 911 calls come in after conditions have gotten so dismal. At a certain mile per hour on wind speed and in certain conditions of the weather, we're no longer going to put and respond emergency equipment out to you. That's a fact. My personnel, our firefighters and paramedics are just as vulnerable to death and destruction and flying debris and major signage from service stations and everything as any of you all would be out there in the field. When we ask you to evacuate, you need to evacuate. Our fire trucks can only withstand so much impact as well. They're not armored vehicles. My firefighters are put in harm's way when people fail to evacuate, and we have to put them in these type of conditions. And now, because you didn't evacuate or you didn't heed the warning, it's so very important that when we give the evacuation orders, you evacuate. We're going to give them well ahead of these type of conditions. If you refuse to evacuate, and these conditions, your house fills with water and everything else, please understand we will not be coming to get you. We are locked down until we hear from the National Weather Service. Our conditions are favorable to put our persons out there and not cause them loss of life or limb. So please adhere to the evacuation warning. Leave early, and you've already heard about hurricane watches, hurricane warnings. Brian probably talked to you about those again, so I won't belabor that point. Be a good neighbor as well. Many of us live in neighborhoods, and many of us live in areas that also have persons, for all intents and purposes, they're off the radar when it comes to fire rescue, and they're off the radar when it comes to law enforcement. They're good citizens that don't cause us any problems. but for all intents and purposes, there are many of them are homebound and may not have relatives in the area to see after them. Please keep them in mind when you're evacuating. Sometimes some of the only people that these people see is Meals on Wheels when they come by and get their food. So if you know somebody needs to evacuate, let us know. We'll make certain that we get over there and get them out of harm's way. We have a program in the city of Tampa, Alert Tampa, and it's just not germane to the city of Tampa. If you live, work, play, or visit the city of Tampa, if you sign up for Alert Tampa, even if you live in Pinellas County, Pasco, Polk, or anywhere, if you frequent this community, please put your information in Alert Tampa. Any conditions that impact this community, whether they're man-made, natural, otherwise, you're going to get a notice of what's going on. It also apprises you of street closures. It tells you what conditions are happening, impending weather changes and things of that nature. It'll provide you every bit of information that you're going to need concerning a situation. It's www.tampagov.net/Alert Tampa. Go to that website, put the information in your cell phone or what other notification equipment that you'd like, and we'll make certain you will obviously get every notification and alert with any bad information. No, I shouldn't say bad information, information of warning. We've also worked with Radio Disney of lately, so we can also enhance the survivabilities of our schools and our children, and also let them know the importance of having a disaster plan, because sometimes when we touch the little darlings sometimes enhance us as parents to say, Mommy, Daddy, we really need a plan, and it kind of energizes our efforts to really make certain that we keep those little darlings safe. So Radio Disney has been locked and loaded with us for probably the past 3 months, and they're doing a good job of getting out to the schools, making certain that our community is even greater enhanced by also apprising the youngsters of some concerns with respect to our states of readiness and disaster preparedness. Community outreach programs, you know, we do the expo every year. It was very well attended this year. Probably in the upwards of 3,500 to 4,000 persons attended that. That's where the entire community comes out or has the opportunity to come out. Businesses and small businesses come out, listen to all of our local meteorologists, our weather persons, and also get apprised of any and everything they can do to make their homes and their communities more safe.
What I want to talk about, I think I got to put my neck to my chin over there, in any case, is really to tell you more about what the National Weather Service does. As mentioned, our office is based in Ruskin, and I'm going to tell you about what we do, go over some hurricane structures, talk about some of the main hazards, and you're going to hear a lot of repeats, and I think that's the main point, is really redundancy. As Chief Ford said, and Preston Cook had mentioned, and Roy and everyone from TECO had mentioned, that repetition and redundancy is really the key to preparedness. But a little bit of information about the National Weather Service in general. You can see the United States here. All the colors represent how many offices we have, just like the one in Ruskin. We have 122 offices making up the National Weather Service, covering every square inch of soil across the country. And you can see all of them in Florida, Key West, Miami, Tampa, Melbourne, Jacksonville, Tallahassee. And looking a little bit closer to our area, we have 15 counties that we're responsible for. And you can see them all the way up to Levy County, down to Lee County. And we have the waters of the Gulf of Mexico from the beaches out to about 60 nautical miles. Now, looking at last year, you've seen some of this information that pretty much all of us have talked about in terms of the review of the 2012 season. Again, here is Africa. You can see Florida on the left. All the lines represent the tracks of either tropical storms or hurricanes. Now, in 2010, 2011, 2012, we saw 19 storms. On average, we typically see around 12. Okay, on average, about 12 storms. 6 of them will become hurricanes. 3 of them will become major, which means Category 3 or higher. Now you can see the record year was 2005, when we had 28 storms. Now, does anyone remember the name of the hurricane that from 2005 that was pretty significant? Hit New Orleans? Katrina. And we over here, you can see the different tracks of one that went towards New Orleans last year. You can see over here, and that was Hurricane Isaac, that of course gave us a lot of headaches during the Republican National Convention as we were watching Isaac develop offshore. So again, this time last year, we already had 2 storms. We had Alberto, which was forming in mid-May, and that was off the Carolinas. And we had Beryl, if you remember, in late May, that was right off the coast of Jacksonville. So again, it is a time of year, and in terms of whether or not they're predictable or not, I mean, we can definitely predict them, but just it's based on a probability about where will they go. And as Preston mentioned, the National Hurricane Center, the science of meteorology itself is not as great in terms of predicting the intensity of these storms. And track is something that we're getting better and better at every single year. You think of Hurricane Sandy, 5 days out, it was forecast to hit the area of Atlantic City, 5 days out. But again, there was a lot of communication breakages between where the hurricane watches were they weren't in effect north of the Carolinas or Virginia. But again, what I like to do is always compare meteorology to the medical field. Go home right now, ask your physician, your doctor, if whether or not how many times you're going to get sick from May through the end of November. Okay, because hurricane season starts from June 1st to November 30th. Ask your doctor how many times you're going to get sick. Then ask them how many times you're going to get really sick, where you're going to have to call into work, you're going to get bronchitis, and then ask them how many times are you just going to have to go to the hospital or get some medication. That's what we're dealing with. Okay, he's diagnosing you, he's giving you a prognosis. Well, we're diagnosing the entire Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, and trying to forecast how many times we're going to get tropical storm development. But looking at some of the peak of the hurricane season, I can see everyone's head kind of going off to the side over there, but you can see over here, September 10, that's usually the peak of the hurricane season. That's usually the time of year when we have the greatest number of systems and the greatest frequency of getting these tropical storms in our area. My main point here is you don't have to have a category 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 hurricane to get some type of flooding. Tropical Storm Debbie, it was not a hurricane. It produced more flooding in downtown Tampa than we've seen from some of our hurricanes over the past 2 decades. And we saw the 3 main developmental stages for tropical depression, storms, or hurricanes. We may be in the system right now as a tropical depression. The Hurricane Center is, and the NOAA Aircraft Operations Center, which is at MacDill Air Force Base, is flying a plane out to the area as we speak. And when they determine whether or not there's a closed circulation, then that's when it becomes a tropical depression. If the wind speeds are 39 miles per hour or greater, that becomes a tropical storm. It becomes Andrea. As the wind speeds get strong enough, it becomes 74 miles per hour or greater. It still stays Andrea in our case today, but it'll become a hurricane. And looking at some of the climatology, or how many storms should we be seeing in certain months, typically in this area, which is ironic given today's development, is that June and October are the 2 months that typically the west coast of Florida has a greater risk of having some type of tropical system. So again, we're looking at June. You can see Florida on the left-hand side with the color just to our west. That is in the exact area where we're seeing potential development. Either way, we're going to see very, very heavy rain. Whether or not it's tropical or not, ignore that. We're going to see very, very heavy rain. We may have the risk of tornadoes as we go into tomorrow, and also some flooding impacts. So it doesn't matter if it has a name or not, the impacts are coming our way. Looking at Tropical Storm Debbie, this was some of the images that we saw last year. And again, it was late June, so again around June 25th or so. Several fatalities, and you can see the track kind of like I just showed you. Where we're looking at the development off the Yucatan, moving up to the north, and then eventually it's going to be moving towards the coast of Florida. So again, this was a satellite shot of Debbie, and you can see the radar overlaid. And we remember that we had a lot of tornadoes also with Debbie, and these were some of the tracks of some of those tornadoes. Debbie, again, a tropical storm, was well to our west and still delivered a lot of significant impacts to this area. And you may remember there was one fatality in Debbie due to a tornado, and that was a woman in Highlands County who was killed in this area right over here. Now, looking at the categories, okay, I mentioned tornadoes, okay, now we have the different Fujita scale, or that F scale. It goes from, F0 on the bottom on up to F1, and we enhanced it, and that's why it's called the EF scale, the enhanced Fujita scale. Now, you all have seen the news of the, devastating tornado impacts that we've seen over Oklahoma, North Texas, over the past couple weeks, and even one recently that was elevated to, the EF5 level. In Florida, we have never ever seen an F5 tornado. We've seen 2 F4 tornadoes, and unfortunately they were in the Tampa Bay area, and they moved over into Polk County, and that was in 1958 and 1966 during the month of April. But you can see in comparing, look at the wind speeds. F5 is greater than 200 miles an hour. You think of the most strongest of hurricanes that are category 5, which is usually anything greater than 155 miles per hour. In tornado land, that's around the F3. So again, you can see that tornadoes on a much smaller scale are the most powerful storms on the planet. Hurricanes, for example, are going to be extremely powerful, as we know, but affect a much larger area. And this is the famous Saffir-Simpson wind scale. I say wind scale because we took away the storm surge element from this scale 2 years ago. You don't see storm surge. You don't see, okay, a Category 5, maybe 20 feet, or a Category 1, maybe 4 to 5 feet, or whatever it may be. Because ever since the hurricanes of Katrina and Ike and Irene and Sandy last year, we know that the storm surge levels do not pair with these wind levels. Okay, so again, Category 1, 74 to 95, all the way down to greater than 155. And the reason why we took the surge out, as I mentioned, by naming those past storms, remember Hurricane Charlie. Okay, I'm going to show a couple graphics of Charlie. Charlie was a Category 4. So again, 131 to 155 miles per hour, a very devastating storm that hit Punta Gorda. It produced storm surge of 6 to 7 feet. If I showed you the old Saffir-Simpson scale, it would show the storm surge for a Category 4 would be around 15 or 18 feet. So again, it depends on the size of the storm. Charlie was very small. It depends on the forward motion, and it depends on the wind speed. But looking at, again, some of the impacts from Tropical Storm Debbie, you remember last year, enormous amounts of flooding in the area, over 20 inches of rain in portions of Pasco and Hernando County, anywhere from 10 to 15 inches of rain across our area. Chief Ford was talking about how wind speeds will impact transportation and will impact emergency response. When we have a tropical storm warning out, that's about, like I said, around 40 miles an hour. That's when it stops. Okay, that's when bridges become unsafe for travel. The Sunshine Skyway Bridge will no longer be passable. And in fact, that was shut down for, almost 2 to 3 days because of Tropical Storm Debbie just lingering offshore. Looking at, again, some of the flooding on a larger scale of Florida, but looking on the right-hand side, this was a comparison. This was Hurricane Francis. For everyone here in 2004, the unfortunate year that kept on giving of Hurricanes Charlie and Francis and Jean and Ivan that hit the Panhandle. This was Francis, and we still got significant impacts. And Jean was almost a near mirror track, came in north of the Bahamas, impacted the East Coast, and then exited our area. So again, a lot of flooding. When you look at a hurricane or tropical storm track, like I mentioned, remember that satellite picture that I showed you of what's in the Gulf today? A lot of the thunderstorm activity and heavy rainfall is going to be to the right of that track, and that's what we're seeing today. So here's the track of Francis. Look at all the flooding and heavy rain to the right of it as it moved up the spine of the Appalachians. Again, Bayshore Boulevard, we all remember that. Again, the road was flooded for over between 2 and 3 days. Just significant, devastating impacts. And I believe the left-hand image was shown. Roy showed this one. And keep in mind, this is not fresh water. This is something to remember. They're floating around. I mean, there's sewage. It's not a good thing to be out there. Chemicals and everything like that. But it's not a good time to be floating out there. But in any case, I wanted to show this because there are some impacts that we can't predict. And by golly, here it is. We just, no matter how hard we try, no matter how many times we come out and plan, we just cannot predict these type of events. But you got to love social media and obviously photoshopping. I think the Gasparilla came back again, I guess, over here. But in any case, now going to the month of July, again, you're starting to see still the Caribbean is showing some chances. That's where some tropical systems will develop. August, you see a lot of colors coming in because really what we're looking at here is the water temperatures are getting warmer in the Caribbean. And the warm water is really the fuel for these storms. And right now, the eastern Gulf of Mexico is extremely warm. That's why we're seeing a lot of development. Looking at Hurricane Charlie, because that was in August. You can see the satellite picture. Here is the eye of Charlie, about to move into Punta Gorda and Charlotte Harbor. Now, talking about, again, predictability. Again, these storms are not unpredictable. And you can see over here, Preston also showed this. This is the graphic from August 11th. And on Wednesday, we all know that Hurricane Charlie made landfall on Friday afternoon, Friday the 13th, 2004. This forecast was dead on. If you're going to look by that wonderful skinny black line that we tell people not to look at. So again, all this cone right here, and that's why I wanted to show it again, is really to show you what you're looking at, because you can see all this on the internet. Go to hurricanes.gov, that's the alias for the Hurricane Center. Whenever you see a cone, the track is forecast to be either here, here, or here. Okay, these are equal chances. The cone is based on errors of track, the history of many, many hurricanes over the past several decades, and where they feel this storm will go, and this is basically the statistics of that storm. So again, it has equal chances of making landfall up near Tallahassee as it does into the Eastern Caribbean, but if you take the average, that's where your skinny black line is. Now I go forward another one to show, okay, this was now Thursday. And now this is when everyone was saying, my God, it's coming to Tampa, Tampa Bay, we're going to get a direct hit. Well, possibly, okay, but again, look where the cone is. Again, we're looking at the Panhandle, we're looking at down maybe north of Marco Island. You get the drill. So again, when you see that cone, this is just an average. This is not definite. As we know, nothing is definite in the field of weather science and prediction. But looking at September, the entire Atlantic definitely increasing the chances for getting tropical systems and hurricanes. October, it does wind down a little bit, but remember I said earlier, the two peaks for Tampa are June and October. And of course we get them in other areas, but look over here. When we get a system late in the season, it typically forms south of Cuba. Okay, this is one of the big source regions that as it moves northward, we also tend to get cold fronts that start coming to our area in the fall. Those cold fronts come on down, it picks the system up, and it moves us off to the right. And that's why it slams right into the west coast of Florida. Now, Tampa Bay has not been impacted by a major hurricane, which is Category 3 or higher, in over 90 years. Okay, everyone thinks, oh, we were hit in 2004 so bad, we had to board up the house, we had to go to shelters, but we didn't get it. Okay, we did not get hit. So again, October 25th, 1921, none of us were here. Not many people are alive in Tampa that went through this. So again, public complacency is our greatest challenge of everyone in this room, because no one truly understands, unless you came here from an area that was hit recently, such as New Orleans or the Carolinas or the Northeast, no one understands really what can happen. And we can show you videos all day, we can show you fancy graphics of going underwater on Kennedy. It's devastating. And that 911, I have not heard that before, that Chief Ford showed, that 911 call, how many of you just felt sick to your stomach hearing that? I mean, don't be that person. Don't put yourself in that position to make that call, and try to make sure that others aren't either. But again, October 25th, 1921, the last time Tampa Bay received a direct hit from a major hurricane. We had a lot of misses, a lot of ones that went over us from the East Coast, Francis and Jean. November, basically the water temperatures are cooling down. But looking at every square inch of the coastline, you can see over here, this is the frequency of how many times those parts of the coastline have been hit by a hurricane. And you can see anywhere from Portland, Maine down to Brownsville, Texas. But of course, Florida stands out. And I'll zoom in. You can see the southeast coast of Florida, obviously, has a greater chance of getting hit. But a lot of people think that the Jacksonville area and the Tampa Bay area are safe. I give these talks a lot. We go out, a lot of people from my office, and we hear a lot of myths. The Sunshine Skyway Bridges has some magnetic, powerful forces that redirects them out. Not true. I hear the Indian tribes that have said things years ago that protect us. And again, don't believe that. Okay, and don't think that it has to be a hurricane to deliver an impact, because we saw that last year with Tropical Storm Debbie, and we may see it again. But looking at another aspect of this presentation is really about what the National Weather Service is doing with everyone, with the communities and with emergency response officials, with media, is really about talking about a weather-ready nation. Okay, it's a new campaign that started a couple years ago, and my office is one of 6 out of those 122 that were selected to do new services. Okay, and it's really because of the massive economic impact we've seen over the past couple of years. 2011, there were 14 different weather events, each producing over $1 billion in damage. In 2012, just last year, there were 11 different weather events that produced over $1 billion of damage. You see Hurricane Sandy up on the north, and you see Hurricane Isaac that fortunately missed us. But now talking about the roadmap for the future for us, what we're actually working on, the Weather Ready Nation pilot is really about building community resilience, and it's about working together to make sure that we get information out and to make sure that we're developing new services. If we go back several decades, we'll be on the teletype and old radars, but now we have dual pole, you may have heard, dual polarization radar, we have fancy satellites, we're able to see these storms developing well before they come our way. So again, my office, Tampa Bay and Ruskin, we're developing some new decision support services. And how this is a graphic I wanted to show you real quick of a computer-generated image of what the radar would look like. You all see radar, I showed it to you earlier, as the storms were coming up from the south. You can see this is the peninsula, Tampa Bay. And we're looking at 8 p.m., 10 p.m., and midnight. This is what the computer model thinks, a computer model that we have running at my office in Ruskin. And the sea breeze, okay, it's thinking where the thunderstorms will be. These thunderstorms can really ruin your day. You can be stuck on the highway, you can get tornadoes, hail, whatever it may be. But now let's look at really what happened in reality. Did the computer do well or not? So again, there is that zoomed in 10 p.m. shot. This is what the radar showed. So again, higher colors and deeper reds in Polk County, and you can see Polk County, Sumter County, a lot of activity in that area. So again, we're trying to find new tools to give information to allow you to make better decisions. The other one is we're improving technology to track and forecast storms. I mentioned the dual pole radar. A lot of the TV stations will have their own radars, and they'll call it different things, and we're all using, they're all using the same information. Storm surge, okay? We're prototyping storm surge warnings. Because as I said, we talked about hurricane watches and warnings. You could have a hurricane warning from, say, Punta Gorda down to Key West, okay? Well, storm surge can occur outside of that warning, because a hurricane warning or a tropical storm warning, all that means is wind. Okay, how much time do I have before 39-mile-per-hour winds come? How much time do I have before 75-mile-an-hour winds come? But what we're seeing is that the water, the number one killer in any tropical system, hurricanes, tropical storms, is storm surge. And we are now going to be issuing storm surge warnings to let people know that water is coming their way. Here's a graphic down here, down south. You can see Fort Myers, Cape Coral, Pine Island, and right here, it almost looks like some evacuation zones, but it's not. And this map is not static. It's going to be changing every time we get advisories from the National Hurricane Center. But what we're looking at here is you can zoom in and you can see how many feet of water above ground level may impact your area. And again, it'll change, but again, it's more information that will allow everyone to make better decisions. And we're going to be testing this. This will be coming out over the next year or two. And we know as far as storm surge, this area is definitely no stranger to it, and it doesn't have to be from a tropical system. This is the superstorm, the storm of the century that I think the Weather Channel coined it, March of 1993. I started with the Weather Service in 1992 up in Connecticut. We used to have an office up there, and I remember this because it turned into a blizzard as it moved up to the Northeast. This actually formed off of Corpus Christi, Texas, where I used to work for 8.5 years, and raced across the Gulf of Mexico and slammed into our coast. People woke up in Newport Richey. They had water in their homes. This was a devastating impact. A lot of tornadoes also impacted, but this is anywhere from 6 to 12 feet of water from storm surge occurred from a winter storm system. So again, storm surge is a very deadly element of weather. But we're also expanding the ways we get information out. How many have ever used Skype before? Anyone Skype folks, anything like that? Well, if you can't see me in the back room, here I am. Here I am. But I was at my office and doing an interview with NBC on Hurricane Sandy. So this was last October. And before, we wouldn't be able to do that. We'd have to have TV stations come to us, or I couldn't go up to New York City and do it with national news. But again, Skype technology helps us get information out to more people. Another element is we're actually dispatching folks to places where Chief Forward is in the Tampa Emergency Operations Center, or where Preston is at the Hillsborough County Emergency Operations Center. And here we are, one example, ESF-13, Emergency Support Function. We have a lot of our meteorologists right over here in the Tampa EOC for either the Republican National Convention, Gasparilla. We were there for Super Bowl in 2009. And we may be there for when we see this developing system. But again, sending people to where the emergency efforts are going on is definitely critical. And looking at a lot of how technology increases our awareness. Like I said earlier, I was using this as some of the other speakers were up there, and I was looking at some of the radar and satellite information and watching the developing system in the Gulf. You can do the same. There's a lot of information on social media. You heard about the reverse 911 and Tampa Alert on tampagov.net, where you can get information. But social media is another massive area where you can get information from us. And of course, you saw some of the links that Preston showed earlier, but look for us on Facebook, look for us on Twitter. Follow us, become a fan, whichever one you'd like to lose. You can see over here, this was taken last night, and we got over almost 7,000 fans for our National Weather Service Facebook page. All you have to do is like us, you know how it works, and then you start gaining information on your news feed. And remember this one. Anyone remember that one? This was the famous water spout that happened February 26th, early this year. It was definitely a slow news day across the country because this was on national news. A lot of impacts. It did some damage in downtown Tampa. It could have been much worse. A water spout is different than its cousin, the actual tornado that forms from rotation in a thunderstorm and then comes down to the ground. This forms from rotation near the surface of the water, and then it goes up to the cloud. So again, you don't even need a thunderstorm to have a true water spout. But in any case, very impressive. It was. There were a lot of rumors about who took the picture. And it was actually a meteorologist, ironically. And he was in town. His wife was taking the bar exam, and they're from Miami. And he was out in his hotel and looked out there and took this $1 million shot. So again, we posted this on our Facebook. We had immediately 2,500 people shared it, and we had over 500 likes. And our website, if you've never been to it before, weather.gov is our main page. And that you can click anywhere across the country. If you go into Montana, click on an office in Montana. But again, weather.gov/Tampa will bring you directly to the National Weather Service Tampa office in Ruskin.